Today we've got Anthropic locking away a model that reportedly found thousands of zero days, the Pentagon banning Claude over military safety limits, Apple rebuilding Siri with model choice, OpenAI quietly filing for one of the biggest IPOs in tech history, and AI CEOs asking Congress to regulate synthetic DNA. This is ASN News, Artificial Signal Network. Signal over noise. Let's get into it. First, Anthropic's Claude Mythos story is still reverberating through cybersecurity. According to the Hacker News, Claude Mythos Preview autonomously discovered thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities across every major operating system and browser. A zero-day means the vendor does not yet have a patch, so defenders are exposed before the fix even exists. That is why this is not just another model benchmark. It changes the assumption that finding serious vulnerabilities requires scarce human experts working slowly. The concrete details are striking. The briefed evidence says Mythos found a 27-year-old bug in OpenBSD, a 16-year-old flaw in FFmpeg, and chained 4 browser vulnerabilities to escape sandboxes. In Firefox alone, Mythos reportedly turned 72% of discovered flaws into working exploits. Security Week also framed the release as a breakthrough with obvious offensive risk, because the same capability that helps defenders find bugs can help attackers find targets faster. The important part is that Mythos was not originally built as a dedicated security product. Its vulnerability discovery emerged from advanced coding and reasoning capability. The OpenBSD case reportedly cost under $20,000 in total to find, which matters because cost is part of threat modeling. If frontier models can discover high-value bugs cheaply, then the economics of cyber offense shift. Anthropic's response was to avoid a public release and instead form Project Glasswing, a defensive consortium with more than 40 organizations, including Apple, Google, Microsoft, and NVIDIA. The evidence says more than 99% of discovered vulnerabilities remained unpatched as of the announcement. That explains the restraint. Shipping a capability like this broadly before patches exist could create a massive asymmetry between attackers and defenders. What matters next is whether Mythos-class capability stays contained. Cybersecurity has traditionally relied on patch windows, disclosure coordination, and response time. But if AI can find and weaponize flaws faster than institutions can patch them, the center of gravity moves toward containment, segmentation, blast radius reduction, and continuous verification. Watch for copycat capabilities in other frontier models, and whether restricted models eventually leak into wider use. That takes us directly into Story 2, because Anthropic's safety posture is now colliding with government procurement. Stark Insider's coverage points to the wider fight around Anthropic, OpenAI, and federal AI adoption, while the State of Surveillance Report and Inside Defense describe the Pentagon's February 2026 designation of Anthropic as a supply chain risk. The reported trigger was Anthropic's refusal to remove safety restrictions that blocked Claude from use in mass surveillance and lethal autonomous weapons. A supply chain risk designation under 41 U.S.C. 4713 allows the government to bar a company's products from federal systems. That kind of label has historically been associated with national security concerns around foreign adversaries, not an American AI lab refusing certain military use cases. Anthropic is fighting the designation in court, and the brief says a preliminary injunction was granted in March 2026 while the Pentagon appeals. The practical consequence is that competitors are stepping in. The Pentagon began replacement testing in March with 25 power users evaluating models from OpenAI, Google, and xAI through GenAI.mil. The official GSA press release cited in the brief says xAI signed an 18-month federal contract for Grok 4 at 42 cents per agency. That number is tiny, but the strategic value is huge. Federal distribution, operational feedback, and institutional trust. Why it matters is the incentive structure. If safety-first companies lose government access
While less restrictive competitors win contracts, the market learns a lesson. The open question is whether AI companies can set hard boundaries on military use without being penalized as unreliable suppliers.
Watch the Ninth Circuit appeal and watch whether Anthropic's position pressures other labs to clarify their own military policies. Next, Apple used WWDC 2026 to answer the question hanging over Siri for years. Can it become a serious AI assistant? According to TechCrunch, Apple revealed a rebuilt Siri on June 8th with a standalone app, a chat-style interface, personal context access, on-screen awareness, and a system-wide search or ask gesture. This is not a cosmetic update. It is Apple admitting the old assistant architecture was not enough for the AI era. The evidence says the new Siri is powered by a custom 1.2 trillion parameter model built on Google Gemini technology. It also uses a mixture of experts architecture, which means only relevant parts of the model activate for each query. That matters because Apple has to make AI feel instant across consumer devices, not just impressive in a cloud demo. Private cloud compute remains part of the picture, but the user experience is the headline. The bigger move is model choice. Reports from T-Break and other coverage say users can choose between ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude as the model powering Apple Intelligence features. If that holds across the ecosystem, Apple is not simply launching another assistant. It is turning the iPhone into a distribution layer for competing AI models, while keeping Apple in control of the interface, privacy framing, and default behavior. Context matters here. Siri had lagged competitors for years, and Apple recently faced a $250 million class action settlement over AI Siri features advertised around the 2024 iPhone 16 launch that stayed unavailable for nearly 2 years. This WWDC was also described as Tim Cook's final keynote before stepping down in September. So the stakes were product, legal, and symbolic. What to watch next is developer adoption of Siri extensions and whether users actually switch models or stay with the default. Story 4. OpenAI is moving toward the public markets. According to TechCrunch, OpenAI filed a confidential draft S1 with the SEC on June 8, 2026, 1 week after Anthropic filed its own IPO paperwork on June 1st. A confidential S1 lets a company submit financials to regulators without immediately making the details public. It is often the first formal step toward an IPO, but it does not guarantee timing. The numbers are enormous. TechCrunch and Yahoo Finance report OpenAI is valued at $852 billion post-money after its March 2026 funding round. The brief also notes Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley are leading the process toward a potential fall 2026 listing, although OpenAI has not committed to a timeline. The company reportedly expects the confidential filing to leak, so it proactively announced the move. Why this matters is transparency. OpenAI began as a nonprofit in 2015, moved through a capped profit structure, and became OpenAI Group PBC in October 2025. Public filings would reveal revenue, margins, infrastructure costs, and burn rate in a way private market narratives do not. The brief says OpenAI projects it will not generate more cash than it spends for at least 4 more years, with $85 billion projected burn in 2028. The question now is who prices first: OpenAI, Anthropic, or SpaceX? These listings could set the valuation benchmark for the entire AI industry. If investors accept the numbers, private AI valuations get validated. If they push back, the market may separate real revenue durability from frontier model excitement very quickly. Finally, competing AI labs are aligning on a rare policy request. According to Crypto Briefing, with additional reporting from Yahoo News and Glitchwire, CEOs from OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, and Microsoft AI signed an open letter around June 3rd and 4th calling for mandatory synthetic DNA and RNA screening. The warning is straightforward. AI could lower the expertise barrier for biological threat creation.
Synthetic DNA screening works by checking ordered genetic sequences against databases of dangerous pathogen DNA before material ships. Today, the brief says no country requires mandatory screening, and much of the process remains voluntary through the International Gene Synthesis Consortium. The proposed measures include mandatory screening, customer verification, and comprehensive risk assessments for synthesis vendors.
This is not only about model behavior. Even if labs improve safety filters, a motivated actor could use AI guidance and then move into the physical supply chain. The letter is arguing that biosecurity needs a real-world checkpoint, not just better chatbot refusals. What to watch next is movement on the Bipartisan Biosecurity Modernization and Innovation Act of 2026, known as S.3741. So the signal today is clear. AI is pressuring every boundary at once. Cybersecurity is being accelerated by models that can find exploits. Government procurement is testing whether safety commitments survive contact with military demand. Apple is making the AI assistant market more open, while OpenAI is preparing to show investors the real economics behind frontier AI. With SpaceX IPO pricing this week, and Apple's Siri now choosing between ChatGPT and Claude, next Monday's question is, who wins when the AI assistant market has real choice? Hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a Monday AI news drop. Subscribe to ASN News, Artificial Signal Network. Signal over noise.